Radio Philippines Network, EXXX Zamboanga, EXXX Zamboanga. The Great 108 is on. Solid for news and information, public service and entertainment. This is DXXX, 108 kilohertz in Zamboanga.
RPN Radio Philippines Network, Radyo Ronda,
EXXX Zamboanga,
kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas. Suena, balance, mapuerza. Este el RPND XXX, Radio Ronda Zamboanga.
I'm Pia Ontiveros. Welcome to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. Tonight on the program, despite a new all-time high for fresh and active COVID-19 cases, the government keeps alert level 3 in Metro Manila and even eases restrictions on Filipinos coming from high-risk countries. With social media as a battleground for the May polls, the Commission on Elections sets up a platform for what will be known as e-rallies. And with billions of views on YouTube, this children's music video reaches a milestone. COVID-19 cases are rising by the day, even reaching record highs this week. But for the government, there is no need to raise the alert level just yet in Metro Manila, the epicenter of the surge. Our Trisha Tarado joins us live. Trisha, explain this to us, please.
Well, Metro Manila will stay under alert level 3 for the rest of January, along with a number of provinces. IATF and presidential spokesperson Carlo Nograles explains Metro Manila is still below the 71% threshold for hospital care utilization rate. That should require a higher alert level. But the government is keeping an eye on the region as as it tries to avoid an alert level 4 scenario by managing hospital bed allocations, giving priority to critical and severe cases, senior citizens, and vulnerable people with underlying illnesses. He says mild cases are referred to temporary isolation facilities. Pia.
Trish, as we understand, the government has released new protocols for arriving passengers. Can you tell us more about this?
That's right, Kia. There are quite a number of new protocols for arriving passengers. In general, all inbound passengers must present a negative RT-PCR test result taken within 48 hours before leaving the point of origin. This used to be 72 hours. Fully vaccinated passengers from green list countries are no longer required to go to a facility-based quarantine, but they should monitor for any symptom for 7 days upon arrival. Passengers from green list countries that are unvaccinated, partially vaccinated, or with vaccination status that can be verified shall stay in a quarantine facility. They will be allowed to leave upon the release of a negative RT-PCR test taken on the 5th day, and they should self-monitor for symptoms for 14 days. Fully vaccinated travelers from yellow list countries shall also stay in a quarantine facility, and an RT-PCR test will be taken on their 5th day. They will be released upon a negative test result, but they have to complete home quarantine up to the 7th day upon arrival. Unvaccinated, partially vaccinated people from yellow list countries and those with unverified vaccination status will have to go through mandatory facility-based quarantine for a longer period. An RT-PCR test will be taken on the 7th day, and even if the results turn out negative, they will have to complete their quarantine period up to 14 days at home. In the meantime, the IATF eases restrictions for Filipino travelers coming from red list countries. Fully vaccinated passengers will have to isolate in a facility with an RT-PCR test taken on the 7th day. They will also be required to complete home quarantine up to 14 days, even if the RT-PCR test turns out negative. Unvaccinated, partially vaccinated individuals and those with vaccination status that can't be verified and are coming from red list countries are required to stay in a quarantine facility for at least 7 days. RT-PCR test will be taken on the 7th day. They may be discharged upon completion of the 10-day facility-based quarantine, regardless of a negative RT-PCR result, but they must finish their quarantine period at home until the 14th day. Nograles says the government lifted the restriction for Filipino travelers from red list countries with these protocols in mind.
Pag sila naman po ay mula sa red list countries, sila dito sa atin, at sumunod strictly doon sa ating quarantine protocols para sa red list, then we are assured naman na mas mababantayan natin na kung positive man sila, if ever, then we can make sure na before we let them out of isolation or quarantine, then we're sure na wala na silang dala na COVID, maging negative na sila sa COVID. Plus, meron pa tayong 48-hour, no? From 72 hours, ginawa natin 48-hour RT-PCR test result na negative before boarding. So all of these taken into consideration, nagkaroon po ng desisyon ng IATF na itong mga kababayan natin na mula sa red list countries ay payagan na nating umuwi, bumalik dito without the need for a bayanihan flight.
The IATF clarifies foreign tourists still can't enter the country. However, eligible foreigners must show proof of full vaccination. There are actually some exemptions. Children below 18 years old and people medically unable to receive the vaccines are exempted, but they must be certified by a competent health authority from their place of origin. Foreign diplomats and qualified dependents or 9E visa holders are also exempted from this rule. Over to you, Pia.
Trisha Tarada there reporting. For the third time this week, the country posts a new high in COVID-19 cases. Fresh infections are 37,207, more than 3,000 from yesterday. The total number of cases, nearly 3.13 million. Active cases, or those currently sick, also the highest at over 265,500. 8 testing laboratories did not submit data. Octo Research Fellow Professor Guido David says cases in Metro Manila could be reaching their peak. The region has recorded almost 16,600 cases from January 7 to 13. David says the reproduction rate was down to 3.77 as of January 10 from 6.13 on January 3. While this is welcome news, he says the region is not yet out of the woods. The health department has a different projection. The agency says the peak is not going to happen soon and it is seeing spikes in other provinces.
Meron pong dobling time na mabilis at yun pong pagtaas talaga ay biglaan. So we are seeing na minomonitor po natin maigi yan yung mga lugar na yan at tama naman po na talagang kailangan po no, na makita po natin ang ibang mga areas na talagang meron ng angking pagtaas ng kaso. Ngayon ito pong sinasabing peak ng mga kaso, base po sa projections na ginagawa ng ating mga eksperto, ang peak po ng mga kaso katulad ng aming sinasabi, it's not going to happen soon. Sa atin pong projections na naipakita sa amin kahapon sa IATF ng ating experts, it's going to happen towards the end of January or even as late as second week of February.
As the government is set to approve self-administered antigen tests, the health department is now preparing a system to allow an individual to submit at-home antigen test results remotely.
Meron na ho tayong sineset up na sistema kung saan kahit po yung mga nasa bahay, maaari na pong mag-log in, ipapasok lang ho nila yung gamit nila ng test at kung ano po yung kanilang resulta, and this will be anonymized so that we can just get the numbers no, of those using antigen test.
Antigen testing was allowed in case finding at the height of the Delta surge late last year. Local governments are supposed to submit results to the DOH, but the department says the submission compliance was low. Of the 1.17 million antigen tests made or conducted between April 2020 and January, only 30% tested positive for COVID-19. Health officials reiterate use the antigen test within 5 to 7 days after the onset of symptoms for a more accurate result. The surge in COVID-19 cases has led to some adjustments in the delivery of services to the public. Tristan Odalo tells us more.
More government offices are now temporarily suspending operations due to the increasing number of infections among government workers. But the Civil Service Commission reminds these offices that services must be unhampered regardless of the work arrangements. The Land Transportation Office announced this week that 32% of its manpower in its central headquarters tested positive for COVID-19 on rapid test. It urges the government to avail of its online services to avoid physical transactions for now. The validity of some licenses and permits has also been extended for another 2 months. The Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board also suspended operations in its main office after more than 50% of its personnel have been infected. The agency hopes to resume operations next week. Courts in Metro Manila and in nearby provinces will also stay closed until January 31st. According to the Supreme Court, hearings will be suspended except for urgent matters but through virtual mode. The Office of the Ombudsman was also shut down this week. Meanwhile, several offices at the Philippine Coast Guard headquarters were placed on lockdown after some 133 Coast Guard personnel contracted the virus. City halls in Cavite and in Bulacan were also temporarily closed due to the soaring cases.
Pwedeng skeleton workforce, pwedeng work from home, because government service kailangan tuloy-tuloy pa rin. Hindi pwede kaming mag-stop or mag-pause. Reduction of on-site workforce or temporary closures merely to conduct disinfection of premises shall not be allowed. Such activity shall be undertaken after office hours or on weekends.
The Civil Service Commission adds that the Commission on Audit and the Budget Department are now allowing government offices to procure COVID-19 home care kits for their employees. Tristan Odalo, CNN Philippines.
The government's no vaccination, no ride policy in public transport takes effect on Monday. George Gilas tells us how this will be implemented and who can be exempted from this policy.
Are you still unvaccinated against COVID-19? Starting Monday, you will be barred from taking any public transportation in Metro Manila as part of the government's no vax, no ride policy.
Ang saklaw po ng ating DO ay lahat ng public transportation, mapa road, rail, maritime, at saka aviation na bumabiyahe papunta, palabas at sa loob po ng National Capital Region.
As a general rule, fully vaccinated individuals need to show a physical or digital proof of their vaccination card or certificate, along with a valid ID, before they are allowed to buy tickets or board a public utility vehicle. But there are exemptions. If your medical condition disallows you to get vaccinated, you need to show a medical certificate with the name and contact details of your doctor. If you're availing of essential goods and services, you need to show a barangay health pass or any proof to justify the travel. And if you're going to a vaccination center to get inoculated. PUV operators, meanwhile, need to ensure that all their drivers and workers are fully vaccinated. Drivers need to display their vaccination card, while conductors need to wear it together with their ID.
The so-called right to ride needs to be balanced with our responsibility as transport regulator to maintain and preserve safe travel.
The enforcement of this policy will be a challenge, especially for non-point-to-point routes of buses and jeepneys. Transportation Undersecretary Steve Pastor says several government enforcement agencies will help them implement the No Vax, No Ride policy. He adds they will also deploy mystery passengers from the department disguised as regular passengers.
So bakit ho sila dapat ma-deploy? Upang masigurado ho natin na kahit wala hong naka-uniforme na enforcer ay sumusunod po ang ating mga drivers dito sa ating polisiya.
The riding public, however, is divided on the issue.
Matatagalan pero okay lang naman po para na din naman po sa protection ng marami. Kasi kawawa naman po yung mga nagpabaksin sa hindi nagpabaksin.
Kawawa naman yung hindi na-vaccine kung hindi pwede sumakay. Abala sa pagsakay kung kapakita pa yung vaccine card.
Violators of the No Vax, No Ride policy may be slapped with fines, imprisonment, or revocation of driver's license or franchise. George Cahiles, CNN Philippines.
Coming up on Newsnight, Comlet launches a platform that aims to level the campaign playing field while staying safe in this pandemic. And knowledge is power. We take a look at Tesla's free online courses on COVID-19 management after this break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. 13 people were hurt in a court-ordered demolition at a fishing village in Barangay Patungan, Maragondon, Cavite yesterday. 5 villagers, 5 police officers, and 3 members of the demolition team were injured after they clashed in the 4 to 5 hectare property occupied by more than 600 families. Fisherfolk Group Pamalakaya says the Manila South Coast Development Corporation, a company supposedly owned by the C family, plans to convert the area into a beach resort. CNN Philippines tried but failed to reach Cavite officials led by Governor John Vic Remulla, Maragondon Police, and the company. The settlers are seeking the intervention of the Commission on Human Rights.
Nagmula pa po 18th century po. Naninirahan na ang mga tao dito.
Nag-usap muna kami, sir, bago naganap ang labanan. Kaya ang sinasabi nila, sumusunod sila sa kanilang nakakataas. Nandoon na po tayo. Kami naman po, alangan naman po namin ibibigay na lang ng basta-basta yung aming kabuhayan.
Meanwhile, SM Investments Corporation reiterates it never owned or pushed for acquisition talks on the disputed property. Now, in this age of work-from-home setups and skeletal workforces, more companies are looking for pandemic-ready skills. That's why the government is offering free online courses on COVID-19 management. Stanley Gaheta gives us details.
As COVID-19 cases continue to rise in the country, more online programs are now available for people to enroll in and complete from the comfort of their homes. The Technical Education and Skills Development Authority encourages Filipinos to avail of its free online courses relevant to COVID-19 management. TESDA Online Program or TOP offers 10 free online training programs related to COVID-19.
Napagpasyahan ko pong mag-take ng training because during that time po, it's pandemic, so walang training, walang work. So it's a good opportunity.
Kailangan po naming mag-training para aware din po kami kung paano din namin mapoprotektahan yung sarili namin.
According to TESDA, health-related online courses were the most in demand among Filipinos in 2021. In fact, almost 400,000 enrolled in human health and healthcare sector courses under TESDA's online program last year.
Practicing COVID-19 preventive measures in the workplace was the most sought-after course.
Actually, per batch po kasi, we have 25 students po per batch. I think we have 12 batches na po ang
TESDA urges local government units and the private sector to avail of its free contact tracing training program and tap its graduates. This would help the locality and different business sectors develop its contact tracing strategies and help prevent the spread of the virus.
Aming hangarin ay magkaroon sila ng skills, knowledge, and how they will deal with those persons na kakaharapin nila.
Over 11,000 trainees have so far finished contact tracing level 2 program. This program runs for 15 days or 120 hours from Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. under blended learning modality. It was developed with the help of the Health Human Resources Development Bureau of the Department of Health and different health industry experts. Scholars are given training allowance of 2,400 pesos for the entire training duration, insurance coverage, and additional allowance to cover internet expenses and personal protective equipment. Interested Filipinos are encouraged to register, enroll, or view the listed online courses at www.e-tesda.gov.ph. Stanley Guedes, CNN Philippines.
The Commission on Elections sets up a new Facebook page that will live stream e-rallies and campaign ads of candidates amid limits to face-to-face campaigning because of the pandemic. The e-rally channel will carry content for those vying for national positions during the campaign period from February 8 to May 7. 3 presidential and vice presidential aspirants will be allowed to air their live streams and campaign videos 10 minutes per day. Senatorial and party list bets will be given 3 minutes each. COMELEC believes the e-channel will level the playing field and allow lesser-known candidates to make themselves heard. COMELEC is also requiring all aspirants to submit a list of their social media pages, including blogs and websites, until January 31st. These pages will be verified. Candidates will not be allowed to host giveaways or raffle off prizes on any of their online platforms. COMELEC holds a pre-conference for one of the petitions against the presidential bid of former Senator Bongbong Marcos. Unlike last week's proceedings, the COMELEC Second Division opted for a closed-door session between the Marcos camp and the Pudnonga Ilocano, or Real Ilocanos, which filed the 7th and last petition against the presidential aspirant. The Pudnonga Ilocano argues Marcos should not be allowed to run in the elections because of his 1995 tax conviction. Both sides were given until Monday to file their respective memoranda or final points on the case. The running mate of Manila Mayor Isko Moreno, Dr. Willie Ong, says he tested positive for COVID-19. The 58-year-old vice presidential aspirant also refutes claims the highly transmissible Omicron variant is mild. He says Omicron is more severe than the common flu. Meanwhile, Vice President Leni Robredo says her experience with the Vaccine Express program proves it is unnecessary to threaten the public to get their jabs. She notes the vaccine turnout in the Aita community was good because of incentives and coordination with local governments, despite initial reluctance. Senator Ping Lacson names former cabinet members and economic managers from the Aquino administration, who he says can help the country get back on its feet. Lacson did not exactly say if he is considering them to be part of his cabinet should he win the presidency. And Senator Manny Pacquiao vows to pursue a one gadget per student scheme to help ease the burden of online learning on students. Pacquiao says the funding will come from the government savings from corruption. Now, just how reliable are pre-election surveys, and do they do more harm than good in shaping public opinion? We have this report.
From marketing, research to election campaigns, surveys measure preference, perception, and opinion. Months in the run-up to the elections, social weather stations, or SWS, and Pulse Asia come up with non-commissioned surveys on public preference for possible candidates.
We have a sample size of 2,400 for the electoral questions. The field interviewers are fielded out to the different barangays to use a probability-based sample to compute the error margin.
SWS and Pulse Asia both conduct face-to-face and paper and pencil surveys. SWS also holds surveys via cell phones. Newcomer Voces Pilipinas, a university-based polling firm led by the Ateneo School of Government, says going online became the next best option because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
The chances of winning the lotto are larger than the chances of being included in a survey. But we do vouch that we conduct these surveys.
The Commission on Elections says only candidates and their political parties benefit from surveys.
Nangyayari is you create in the voting population the mindset na boboto sila doon sa winnable. All it does is really contribute to the bandwagon effect, which I think we've seen it many times before, is actually detrimental to the quality of elections.
But SWS believes voters are hardly influenced by surveys. A poll done in 2016 showed 84% of respondents said election surveys had no impact on them. At every election, some groups call for a ban on surveys close to voting day, a practice done in some countries. While the Commission on Elections had previously warned against the effect of possible errors in surveys to the electoral process, the Supreme Court in 2001 ruled that the conduct of surveys is covered by the constitutional guarantee of free speech, expression, and the press. Survey groups say each voter will eventually seal the fates of candidates.
That surveys are just a snapshot of a portion of public opinion. They should make their own decisions, not from the surveys. And they should be discerning really.
And when the votes are cast, survey groups also team up with the media on election day to conduct exit polls, asking voters their choices in the ballot. They say this helps to make the process transparent and prevent fraud.
Over 60 senatorial aspirants, but only 12 will be chosen. Who will you vote for? CNN Philippines will help you decide as we bring you where we get to know our aspirants, watch them side by side as they bear their platforms, principles, and stances on issues. First to join our forum, re-electionists Win Gatchalian, Risa Ontiveros, and Big Zubiri. Catch that on Sunday, January 16 at 7 p.m. with our anchor and senior correspondent Ruth Cabal, only here on CNN Philippines. When we return on Newsnight, which Pinays were recognized by Forbes magazine for leading the way in Asia? And this viral sensation is still making waves online 5 years later. We'll tell you about Baby Shark's latest YouTube milestone after the break. Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Two of our kababayans made it to Forbes magazine's 50 over 50 Asia 2022 list. Nobel Prize laureate Maria Ressa was among the roster of women recognized for shattering gender norms around the world. Forbes cited the Rappler CEO for being, quote, insistent in her urge that all journalists use truth to hold power accountable, unquote. Converge co-founder and president Maria Grace Uy also entered the prestigious list. In a statement, Uy said the honor shows to women the value they can bring to their field at any age. That familiar tune just became the first ever YouTube video to hit 10 billion views. The viral track for kids, Baby Shark, first set the record for most views back in November 2020. It has since become a Nickelodeon TV show, a serial, and even made the Billboard Top 40 at one point. The song was created by South Korean educational company Pinkfong. And that is it for tonight. I'm Pia Ontiveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
ang gagaling. And the government has been very, very active po sa campaign against this disease because it has caused a lot of deaths before. So nothing much has changed about the disease except very important po re-emphasize pa rin ng government ang 4S po. Ito po ang ating moves against the spread of dengue.
Bago nagkaroon ng pandemic, lahat ng mga may lagnat is considered dengue until proven otherwise. But dengue is still around, so we still need to be careful for it. Now, dengue is a disease caused by any one of 4 closely related types of dengue viruses. And as of now, there's still no cure for it, but treatment is towards symptom relief. Dr. Sally, could you tell us about some of the signs and symptoms that may point to a person having dengue?
So when we say dengue, the most common signs and symptoms of such includes yung intermittent fever or yung pabalik-balik na lagnat which may last for 2 to 7 days. Some patients may also exhibit yung mga muscle and joint pains, yung pagsakit ng mga kasukasuan, and others may also feel yung mga pain behind the eyes, masakit yung mata nila, and there may also be associated na bleeding from the gums, nose, and even sa stool. Some may also experience loss of appetite or yung kawalan ng na kumain at pagsakit ng tiyan, and also skin rashes.
If you're feeling any of these symptoms, telehealth is readily available for you. Dengue infection can get progressively worse, so early detection ang kailangan. These types of symptoms, Dr. Sally, some people may automatically think na meron silang COVID-19. Ano yung mga symptoms ng dengue na talagang bukod tangi sa dengue?
To distinguish them apart, since overlapping yung symptoms nila, is to get the diagnostic test specific for those diseases.
Right.
That way, we can tell them apart, we can objectively and accurately diagnose the patient. Kapag may kahit isang symptom pa lang, the best thing to do while waiting to be tested is to isolate themselves kasi hindi pa sure kung ano yung pinakasakit nila, whether dengue ba talaga or COVID-19.
Now, another mosquito-borne disease that has quickly evolved in our country is malaria. Now, Dr. Ferdy, anong mga simptomas ang pwedeng makita sa isang tao na may malaria?
With malaria po, there is a cycle. So fever, chills, diaphoresis. So in other words, ano po itong diaphoresis? Pinagpapawisan po. So cold, clammy perspiration. So pareho po siya ng, let's say, COVID, ng nasabi ni Dr. Dengue, but may cycle po. So every 3 days, pwede siyang cyclic, periodic, every 4 days. When it comes to malaria, dapat po may history of travel sa endemic areas. You don't find malaria in the heart of Metro Manila.
Okay, I think you bring up a good point, Dr. Ferdy, that malaria is very unlikely to be seen here in populated areas, urban areas. Why is that so? Meron kayang kinalaman ito sa type of vector at yung kung saan niya gustong manirahan?
The scientists discovered an additional species po sa list of mosquitoes responsible for malaria. So 5 na po yun, but fortunately, the mosquitoes cannot breed in Metro Manila. Kaya nga po, identified na lang po ang selected areas in the Philippines, Palawan, and I think some towns of Rizal. So this is actually the most difficult to treat, and it has high fatality rate if untreated po.
Now, apart from mosquito-borne illnesses, a number of rainy season diseases in our country are due to improper solid waste disposal. It's also a common pastime to wade in flooded waters here at home, and among these diseases is leptospirosis. Dr. Ferdy, please explain kung ano ang leptospirosis. Anong dapat malaman ng ating mga viewers?
Ang leptospirosis po, again, nakukuha po ito sa baha. A lot of our kababayans already know that. Sasabihin po ng iba, wala po akong sugat. Dok, paano ako nagka-lepto? Wala akong sugat. Usually po, yung mga dry skin natin sa paa can be an entrance for leptospira. But the common advice, of course, is pag umulan po, lalo na ngayon, monsoon rains, yung unang baha po, that's the one at the highest risk for leptospira. Kasi ito yung mga natambak na basura sa mga estero po. And if it rains, they get loosened up. And yan po ang lumulutang sa baha. So yung mga workers po, when they go to the office, ang advice lang po namin is wash when you reach home.
Given that contaminated water might be hard to avoid for many people here at home, what is the best way to prevent leptospirosis, Dr. Sally?
The best way to prevent leptospirosis is, of course, to avoid swimming, yung pagligo, and even yung wading sa potentially contaminated floodwaters or yung paglusong sa baha. And if it's inevitable or wading in flood cannot be prevented, best to wear protective clothing or footwear such as raincoat and boots. Getting infected is highly likely if the person who waded or yung lumusong sa baha has an open wound or may mga dry cracked skin. And lastly, and most importantly, always maintain cleanliness in the house to ensure proper control of rodents or rats infestation.
These are only a few diseases we need to protect ourselves from. When we return, we'll continue with our discussion on other monsoon diseases. Stay with us here on MedTalk Health Talk. You're watching CNN Philippines. Today, we're talking about monsoon diseases and how we can protect ourselves and our loved ones from them, especially in the middle of this pandemic. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. Just like many monsoon diseases, typhoid fever is a disease caused by improper sanitation. Dr. Ferdy, let's talk about typhoid fever. Ano ba ito? Saan ba nakukuha ito?
Typhoid fever po is a food. You have to be careful of the food that you take, again, because food may be contaminated. Mostly fecal oral and typhoid fever.
Because typhoid fever usually spreads through yung feces or urine ng mga taong infected nito. And there are a few other factors that can make you more vulnerable to it. Dr. Sally, let's emphasize to our viewers 3 or 5 factors that they need to be mindful of to protect themselves against typhoid.
So the risk is higher in population with lack of access to safe water and adequate sanitation. The risk is also greater if you travel to endemic areas with poor sanitation, poor hygiene, and proximity to yung mga flying insects like yung mga langaw. Kaya we always advise our patients to avoid yung mga eating street foods which can be potentially contaminated since yung mga street foods, di ba, they are more commonly left uncovered. And even yung consumption or pagkain natin ng mga raw and contaminated fruits and vegetables can also be a risk factor. That's why it's important to wash thoroughly or hugasan po natin maigi ang mga fruits and vegetables before eating them and cook our food well and use food cover. That way, flies can be prevented from contaminating them. High risk factor din yung pagiging isang healthcare worker who handles directly specimen for mga typhoid fever.
Now, many of you have probably experienced diarrhea at one point. It's usually just mild and mainly affects probably young children below 5 years old. But Dr. Sally, when is diarrhea a cause for concern?
So most cases of diarrhea naman are self-limiting or they resolve by themselves. However, in cases of severe diarrhea, meaning you have more than 10 episodes of loose stools in a day or diarrhea presents with fluid losses having greater than the oral intake, meaning mas marami siyang nilalabas kaysa sa naiinom, that can lead to dehydration, which is a life-threatening concern or if left untreated. So lalo na sa children, dehydration is particularly dangerous. So warning signs for diarrhea which can be causes of concern includes yung mga diarrhea that lasts for more than 24 hours even if you already started your treatment, excessive thirst or uhaw na uhaw ang bata with dry mouth, sunken eyeballs, and some may also present with pag kinurot mo sila or if you pinch their skin, hindi siya bumabalik for less than 2 seconds. So that's also a warning sign. And even yung mga passage of bloody stools or fever na high grade, those are mga particular causes of concern natin.
And if you have diarrhea or LBM, drink at least 8-ounce glasses of water each day. Advice to this is you drink these in small sips. So tuloy-tuloy but small sips to give rest to your stomach and its hyperactivity. During the monsoon time, that is very common. The Department of Health reports that at least 480,000 Filipinos are affected by the flu each year. Now, the flu is a highly contagious respiratory illness that infects the nose, the throat, as well as the lungs. Dr. Ferdy, how is this usually treated ba kapag ang isang tao ay may trangkaso? Okay ba dito ang paglo-load up, pagdo-double, triple dose, quadruple dose ng vitamin C?
We tell our patients if they have a case of ILI, meaning influenza-like illness po. So pag sabi namin sipon-sipon lang, masakit ang katawan mo, sa trangkaso lang yan, pahinga lang po sa bahay, rest, and lots of fluids and vitamin C. But nowadays po is much complicated, lalo na if you go to the hospitals. Kasi po pareho po silang mga influenza-like illnesses. But in this case, pag sigurado tayo na trangkaso na, of course, paracetamol lang po, vitamin C and pahinga. But if you have yourselves checked, and it turns out to be positive for COVID, ibang usapan na po yan. Pero sila po, kasama po yan sila sa ini-screen ngayon in the fever lines po ng DOH.
For some people, the change in season might also mean mga allergies. The rainy season usually brings about common allergens such as pollen, dust mites, as well as mold. Now, this allergic reaction is called allergic rhinitis or allergic rhinosinusitis. Now, Dr. Sally, how can we know if we're sensitive sa mga allergens na ito? No? Ano yung mga symptoms naman na pwedeng maramdaman kapag may allergic rhinitis ang isang tao?
Okay, so when we say allergic rhinitis, it is an allergic response to a specific allergen or allergens. It is usually caused when our body overreacts to a certain allergen like pollen, dust, or molds. Common signs of allergens includes yung very common is yung sneezing or yung pagbahing more than the usual, runny nose or yung passage of watery nasal discharge, and also they may also present with itchy or dry eyes yung makati yung mata nila. Some may also have dry or tickly cough, yung kumakati po ang lalamunan nila, and occasionally with sore throat and cough. Yung cough naman nila, hindi siya nagpa-persist. It's more of with particular timing of the day dahil brought about by the post-nasal drip. So, ang difference niya with allergic rhinitis, definitely you won't have fever and you won't have mga muscle pains like those na nakikita natin sa other illnesses.
Now that we know about these prevalent monsoon diseases, what's the best defense against them? We'll discuss this after a short break. We want to be your partner for a lifetime of good health, so stay with us on CNN Philippines. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk, where your health comes first. If you find yourself getting sick this rainy season, don't panic. Sometimes it can be prevented, but there are so many steps you can take to protect yourself from all of these viruses. From frequent hand washing to staying hydrated and getting immunization shots or prescriptions, we'll discuss all of these right now. So your first and best line of defense against viruses is to choose a healthy lifestyle. This is the best way to naturally keep your immune system strong. Dr. Sally, can you give us some tips to strengthen our immune system?
Our first line of defense is really to choose a healthy lifestyle. It is the single best step we can take to naturally keep our immune system working properly. So our body functions better when we are protected from environmental assaults and reinforced further if we take yung mga healthy living strategies such as avoiding smoking or other vices, eating nutritious food, staying hydrated, taking our daily doses of vitamins, exercising regularly, and getting adequate sleep, and as much as possible, try to minimize yung mga unnecessary stress. We must also update our immunization since vaccines are there to prime our immune system to fight off diseases even before they enter our body. So all of this play vital roles in fighting off diseases and strengthening our immune system.
Now, never underestimate what eating healthy, exercising regularly, and getting enough rest can do for your body. Now, vitamins and supplements are also a good way to boost one's immunity. Now, while most vitamins can be taken at any time of the day, some vitamins are actually better absorbed under certain conditions. Dr. Ferdy, what are some of the vitamins na dapat tinitake ng ating mga viewers?
What is very important nowadays is vitamin C plus zinc. Well, for the senior citizens, they have maybe antioxidants more, vitamins with antioxidants. Of course, different from the needs of those of young adults who go out to work, okay, who commute, because seniors have to stay at home, so less activity now. Of course, for children, another set of vitamins. So it depends on the age group and to the call of the physician. But I would still advise, eating healthy food, okay? So not so much with the vitamins because we are a culture who depended so much on vitamins, I would prefer we eat the right food and sleep.
It is actually more ideal to get your vitamins as well as any other nutrients doon sa pagkain na tinitake mo. Ngayon, going with what Dr. Ferdy said, Dr. Sally, meron ba tayong good sources ng vitamins pagdating sa pagkain?
Yes, there are. Aside from the usual na over-the-counter vitamin C supplements we can purchase from drugstores, it can also be found in many foods, particularly sa fruits and vegetables. So the top sources of vitamin C are citrus fruits, yung oranges, kiwi, cantaloupes or melon, strawberries, even peppers, tomatoes, cauliflower, broccoli, and potato. So basically, madali naman silang hanapin among sa mga groceries and even sa mga stores natin.
Yes, that's right. So hindi dapat maging mahal para kumain ng masustansya. So try to incorporate these foods into your daily diet as much as possible. And we also continue to remind you to always wash your hands and practice minimum health standards. Let's all work together to keep safe from these monsoon diseases as well as COVID-19. With that, I'd like to thank infectious disease specialist Dr. Ferdy de Guzman and pediatrician Dr. Rosalie Fuentes de la Rosa for guiding us today with this topic. We hope our conversation was very helpful to our viewers. Choose well and choose to be healthy. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez. Stay safe and we'll see you again next time.